So now I'm pleased to hand things off to David Leonard of Bottom Line Technologies.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and thank you to everyone who joined the session today. I know everybody's got busy schedules, so I appreciate you taking a few moments out of your day to join me and talk about, the most efficient way to help manage your financial documents. The technology's changing, new things that are coming out that, always looking for ways to improve how things can be done and achieved and make it easier for customers in terms of how to manage their documents. And what I want to do today is kind of lean on the last 20 years of my time and experience in this industry of working with transactional documents and as well as various levels of automation, whether it be invoice automation and sales order automation, et cetera, et cetera. I've worked in different areas, different roles, and it's helpful to kind of bring all those elements together to provide a perspective of how financial documents and how they get managed and be easier for you to manage them internally can be achieved. So with that said, I manage our GBS Solutions group here at Bottom Line Technologies, and I've been with the organization itself for 16 years. So thank you again for your time today, and I'm going to jump right in. And when we talk about financial documents, we're primarily talking about those documents that are typically more outward facing, right? Things that are, whether it's on the accounts payable side, things like purchase orders, things like checks, for example, check remittances, so on and so forth. We could be talking about sales orders, bills of lading, packing slips, et cetera, et cetera. So these are documents going out of your organization, sometimes internally to employees, but more times than not, they're outward facing to your customers and vendors, right? And they're still very, very centric to businesses today. A lot of things have become electronic. There's business-to-business communication and EDI and things of that nature, XML files, and that sometimes removes a lot of human intervention. But the reality is that it's still a very document-centric world out there. And although paper has been decreasing in various capacities, right? A lot of times that's with the advent of things that's being sent via email or fax servers, which is less common these days. At the end of the day, though, a lot of people still turn around and print those things out. And, the way these documents look is the image that they want to portray to their customers and their vendors. So, they still need to be very professional looking, regardless of the type of document. They need to be very rich in formatting, really rich in terms of the content, making it easy to read, making it easier for the end recipient to consume, so it avoids any kind of exception handling. Certainly, we need to be able to make sure they get distributed in different capacities, and that's not typically a problem. Print and fax and email, these are very prevalent these days. And many companies still archive their documents. They still print out copies, maybe not all the different documents, but a lot of companies still like to have and retain a copy of those documents. That leads to typically things like file storage and off-site storage and et cetera, et cetera. So these are the things that we typically see involved with the financial documents and how companies communicate with their customers and vendors, right? And one of the things to think about is, what are the challenges associated with those document-centric processes? A lot of times people just see it as a necessary evil. They've got to do it, right? But what about the challenges that come up along the way, and can there be things that can be utilized to make it more streamlined? First and foremost is just the time and effort and the skills to manage the creation of the documents, right? So in the Dynamics world, there's different tools such as SSRS that allows for the facility to do just that. It's not always the most user-friendly environment, but that's one of the challenges. It's got various other challenges that go along with it that I'll highlight in a moment. Documents aren't always friendly in terms of being able to track and trace. Did it get to the end recipient? Did it get to the right person? Did they actually do anything with it? All most customers know is that it just goes out the door, right? No different than mail. We put it in the mail, a document, and we hope it gets to the other side. And unless I don't hear a response sometimes in a certain period, then I may not know if it actually got there. And then that causes delays, and delays can certainly lead to a lot of implications. The visibility of documents can be quite restrictive, right? Certainly if you're if you're using archiving means, which is the old paper filing storage, that's very restrictive, right? You know, who's going to be able to get access to that except for a few core people that have proximity to those? If you store things off-site, you know, then the steps you go through to bring that back and retain that document, whether it be for audit purposes or what have you, becomes, again, very restrictive, not very easy to get access to. What about outside user access? What about vendors, your vendors? What about your customers? You know, does it make sense to allow them to have access to those documents? That's a challenge if you're doing all that internally. Naturally, a byproduct of a lot of these things are, you know, it takes various systems to manage these aspects. With systems comes cost, not only the hardware costs and the cost of and licensing costs, but the cost to maintain them over time, the cost to upgrade over time as new technology refreshes come out. And all those things I just mentioned relate to cost as a whole. And companies these days, of course, are always looking for ways to manage their costs. So I want to take just a few minutes to go through some of these individually and break it down in terms of how these are not only just some of the challenges, but better yet, where are there opportunities to improve on those challenges and solutions that could help you know, make these things go away. And then we'll kind of go into a little bit of an actual demonstration of a solution that can do that for you. So let's talk about the time, effort, and skills to manage the creation of documents. If I go back to what I showed you earlier, right, people want to be able to produce highly personalized documents, very rich and custom formatted, if you will. And a lot of times that requires, you know, a certain skill set, and that skill set sometimes can be a programmer. Then you got to get outside resources, outside that requires additional expenses, right? Takes time, and all that might mean also additional coding. Those are things that you want to try and avoid, obviously. So there's ways that you can look at trying to eliminate that. And with that, if you think about the most traditional way, right? You know, for Dynamics, say you're using SSRS, you know, it generates a file, then out comes that report, and you send it out to a printer, an email, and maybe you store a copy, a printed copy in a filing cabinet. Maybe sometimes you store it into a network file folder, right? So at least it's still a little bit electronic, but not always easily retrievable. And these are going out to your customers and vendors, right? You know, SSRS is not the most intuitive design tool. Takes a very specialized skill set. There's no centralized portal to view all the activity regardless of the distribution method. How do you know if it printed? How do you know if it emailed? How do you know if it got if it's stored and you can gain access to it correctly and easily, for that matter? Certainly the flip side of that is customers and vendors typically don't get access to that. They wind up picking up the phone, they make a call into a certain department, they ask if they get a copy or et cetera. Somebody has to go pull it out, and it just starts this vicious cycle of manual effort. And as a result of that, there's no way to do any kind of online collaboration and auditing of those kind of conversations, because it's all just via phone versus doing it through portals. So these are those challenges associated with all of that. And what we view is that there's a solution that can help you overcome that particular challenge, and that is what we call PTX Connect. PTX Connect is a collaborative cloud-based service. So again, notice the highlight. There's a cloud-based service that helps organizations with, well, customizing document creation, the ability to print, deliver out via, say, email, online storage, as well as once everything's through this going into the system, being able to track that information in real time and trace where it's going and validating that it got to its end destination accordingly. And then there's even additional things that it can capture along the way. All this, of course, also being able to provide a secure collaboration with whether it's your internal users, customers, and suppliers. So now there's an ability through a portal for people to collaborate and audit and date and timestamp that kind of back and forth correspondence. If we take a little bit of a closer look, what would this look like if we flipped it around now, right? So today, I showed you a moment ago, traditionally just an SSRS report goes out, and once it goes out, then, you know, although it's not perhaps the most easiest way to generate your documents, you really have no visibility to any of that. So how could PTX do that through the cloud? So you still run your reports out of Dynamics. There's facilities to be able to get that report data out. doesn't have to be a formatted report, right? There's ways to get that out in other formats, such as text files or XML, etc. And PTX Connect can consume that file very easily. And by virtue of consuming it, it can then handle all the actual document rendering that needs to be applied to it to give it that rich formatted presentation. We, bottom line, provide the service of setting that all up for you. So you don't have to manage it. You don't have to maintain it. It's all just part of the service. And yet you still have the ability to have PTX, although in the cloud, print it back to your print destinations where it's applicable within your organization. So although it's not installed on-premise and it's in the cloud, it does have the ability to redirect print jobs back. Naturally, if you want to do things like emailing, it can then send out that email distribution as well. And that's an important piece because not only we don't want to send it back and have it go back out via your mail server, because PTX Connect now can provide the track and trace capabilities to know, A, did it actually get sent successfully? Did it actually get opened? Did it get viewed? Did it get printed? Did it get downloaded? And these are all important pieces that people might need to know with regards to certain documents so they can be proactive versus reactive. In addition, in some cases, it's within Dynamics, say like Microsoft Dynamics AX, there's preview capabilities that are built into Dynamics, and we don't want to break that feature. We don't want to make sure. We want to make sure that the user still has that capability. And we've got tight integration into Dynamics AX, for example, where we're able to not only render that document, we can return it right back into Dynamics so the user can preview it right there online. And so the whole idea is to stay very tightly integrated and not lose any functionality along the way. Now, with that said, I mentioned about file storage. Well, it's all in the cloud. The documents are being rendered there. Well, guess what? We also store the document in the cloud as well. And by virtue of being in the cloud, now you as the customer, or as the company, if you will, has the ability to go and search and view those documents. You can set up your own user roles and permissions as to who sees what. Even more so is that you can also set up the ability for your customers and or vendors to gain access to certain documents that you find applicable for them to view. And of course, they would only get to view those that are specific to them. And that takes away the headaches of your organization having to deal with a lot of inquiries, and it can be more self-serving. Now, with that said, last but not least, there are some organizations that still come back to us and say, I like this managed service. I like the fact that it's all done in the cloud, and I don't have to worry about all my infrastructure to do all this. But I still want to have control of the actual presentation and design of my own documents. And that's fine. The service doesn't exclude that from occurring. With that, there's our Precision Forms design solution that allows for customers to be able to manage and maintain it internally. And that's a skill set. That's a very easy to use design tool. As I transition in, it's a simple, easy drag and drop solution that allows you to quickly and easily build out that document presentation to whatever format that you desire. It does not require programmer level skills by any means. On top of that, you can get that, like I said, that formatted document the way you want. You can leverage things like conditional logic, so you can build rules in how you want to display things. You don't have to create different versions for every single kind of layout. Use logic like if it's this business unit, then use this address. If it's this company, then use this logo, et cetera, et cetera. There's also things like totals, subtotals, calculations, barcodes. There's dozens of barcodes that are included, all your standard ones and even two-dimensional barcodes. Microsoft is also part of the solution so that you can design checks easily to be printed along with signatures that could be displayed based on certain signature dollar limits. So all that, again, can be done, and if you as an organization wish or desire to manage that yourself, then an extension of the PTX is a design tool that allows you to do that. And there's a facility to manage that on-premise at your location and then upload that into the cloud so that it's deployed and then active and in production. Now, with that, we talked about how documents can be rendered in the cloud and how we can manage the whole delivery of it. But would be nice to take a closer look of what's going on with those documents. As again, today when you print, it goes to print queues, and you can go look at Windows print queues and see if things got one in and things went out. But you kind of may look at a job level, right? What about things like emails? You know, you can go into your mail server and see if maybe it got sent or kicked back, but it doesn't give you any kind of a transactional way to look at things very easily. With PTX Connect, there is the ability to do that. And if you look at certain areas of the business, this is very, very critical. And for specifically, I'll highlight accounts receivable for a moment. You know, if you look at some different studies out there, you know, whether it's across treasury managers, finance managers, et cetera, accounts receivable managers, you know, they're not very happy with the way their processes work today. It's a very manual intensive process. If you look at collections, for example, right, there's the process, invoices go out, they wait for them to get paid, and you got this whole 30, 60, 90-day cycle thing, and I got people who have to call, and then they hear things like, well, we didn't get our document, and it starts the whole cycle over again, and it really, you know, impacts their cash flow forecasting, right? So with that, you know, becomes all this need for being able to have better visibility, and you can see some 40+% report that they have very poor visibility into the receivables information. So if you think about PTX Connect and everything I just described a moment ago, what you'll notice is that we also, with the service, provide a portal view. And as a company utilizing PTX Connect, you can go into that portal, and now you can look at documents more closely and what's going on. Now, this is a screenshot, and I'll kind of highlight this in a moment in a little bit more detail in a live presentation. But the biggest thing to highlight here is as documents get produced and rendered and distributed, we also provide status of, well, did it actually get to its end destination? And we provide visual, you know, color schemas there, if you will, that help draw users' eyes and attention right to some specific things. Obviously, red would not be good. It failed. I know I've got to step in. I've got to work with that document in a quick time frame to make sure it gets managed properly. I might see yellow. It's a warning. Man, maybe everything got delivered. Maybe it didn't. I can drill in. I can see those details. If you notice look closer, there's even the ability to see if somebody viewed a document. Not only did I deliver it, I can tell if they actually looked at it. That's pretty powerful, especially if I'm an accounts receivable, because if it's 5 days past the sending of an email out to that vendor, to that customer, and they haven't opened it and they haven't looked at it, well, that's a risk. That's a risk of getting paid. What happens if it sits for another 5 days or 10 days or whatever? Now all of a sudden, instead of waiting until it's past its terms, you or accounts receivable could be more proactive and reaching out and say, hey, well, why isn't this? I sent this out, but nobody's opened it up. This could be a very number of reasons as to why that might occur. So there's the ability to look at status. There's also the ability to see any errors. So up in the right-hand corner, you can see if there's anything printing-wise that didn't get delivered successfully. It notifies you, and there's a portal to go to view those specifically. There's also indicators of collaboration. Imagine myself as a recipient going in, and I see a document, and I got a question about it. I can actually just send that question right in, and I get notifications that there's an inquiry, and I can look at that collaborative comment back, and I can keep building on that. And all that goes into audit trail details along the way. So that track and trace capability becomes very, very valuable. There's even a little mini dashboard across the top that allows you to help drill down into those different buckets, so you can quickly filter and focus your efforts where it needs to be. Now, when you think about delivery, right, printing is pretty simple. You know, it sends it back to the printer and it comes out, and then you manage it from there. Email is becoming a very, very, very typical way of how companies communicate with their customers and vendors. And when you think about PTX Connect, in order to gain insight as to whether they actually viewed a document, printed a document, downloaded a document, what PTX does is it sends an email that actually you can see it can be personalized with your logo and other information, but it allows them to actually click on the view document to pop it up so they can actually view it, and they're essentially being redirected back to the PTX service, and that document now is being tracked and traced and audited every step along the way. So it doesn't really add any steps to the process. I mean, attachment would be, you know, a couple clicks to open it up. Here, it's just open the email, one click, and there's the document, and then off they go. So again, now all of a sudden I've got file storage that allows my the ability to open up the door for outside as well as inside personnel to gain access to documents that I set up securely for who needs to see what. Visibility can be very restricted. This was one of the other challenges, and I've kind of already hinted towards, you know, the visibility factor here. But, you know, I'll just kind of highlight once again, most common what we see is that, you know, people use things like filing cabinets, and then that sometimes leads to off-site storage, you know, and whether it be things like Iron Mountain, what have you. And we all know that drill of when somebody needs to go back and an auditor comes in and see a document, I got to make the call, I got to go pull back those boxes, and it takes time, it takes effort, and it's manual, and all that's costing money, money and time. Some people will still use the old network file storage. You got to have a pretty good setup there to be able to know how to name things and how to categorize things and where to put things, and then you got to worry about how many files go into folders. And it's somewhat restrictive in terms of its ease of getting to certain documents and how you search on them. The number of index fields are perhaps not as evident in terms of what you can put into a file name and be able to quickly locate a document. So with PTX Connect, you know, as I mentioned before, all those documents are stored online, but now you have them available 24/7. All you have to do is have access to a web browser and permissions. You can log in, and based on your user ID and the roles that have been set up, will determine what you have the ability to view. And again, think of it as like a digital filing cabinet. You know, eliminates, and because it's a service, you as an organization don't have to worry about the disk space. You don't have to worry about backups and recovery and everything. That's all done for you. And that's the beauty of all this being done in the cloud. It offloads all those IT components that people have to factor and consider when looking at your document-centric processes. So a little bit more about visibility and access. It's just an extension of having all this rendered and done in the cloud, as making it easy for and whoever needs access to gain that information. So I'm going to take that, and you know, if you think about the last couple of challenges that I mentioned, right now, all those leads to time and effort and cost. And what I want to do is take a moment to kind of highlight this in real time. And I'm going to minimize the presentation. And you know, because some of you might be using different, you know, dynamic solutions, whether it be GP or whether it be, say, AX, we're just going to simulate a job that would be running. And here's an invoice job where, you know, imagine if I was in AX and I hit my print job, and basically it ran that through a facility where it could actually make sure that it went in there. Copy it over there. Copy. There we go. It picked it up. So, you know, with that job runs automatically, and that file would just be sent right to the PTX in the cloud. And there's ways that gets set up within your environment to facilitate it, and it's done in a secure fashion at that. Now, what happens? Where did it go, and what actually transpired? So as I go over to PTX, it's just, again, a web-based solution where if I put in my credentials here, so after putting in my credentials, you'll notice that that job is, that I've just submitted is actually in the process of running, right? So I can see some things have been printed, some things that are still unsent. And if you look across the top in the dashboard, it does a good job of trying to break down, you know, what's actually going on from the time a document came in to what's unsent, what's in the process of being sent, what documents have failed, what documents, well, we think it got delivered correctly, but maybe it didn't get sent correctly, right? So after, it might be a warning message as a result. What about, did it get delivered? And you can see these numbers are changing. So as jobs are running, these things are basically moving left to right. And by moving left to right, you can get a visual and then a status check of what's going on. You can also look at it at a transactional level as well, right? So if I come down here, I can see that jobs are actually running. And I actually submitted that job a couple times there a moment ago, right? So if I go down a little bit more, you can see that, you know, I got the the first job that was submitted, and I copied and pasted it right behind it, right? So I'll let this other job catch up, and you can see things are starting to fill in here. Things are printed by the sender. Things are unsent. Notice I got some warnings. Notice I got a failed. Now, why did it fail? Right? Perhaps it was not a valid email address. Well, how do I know? How do I dig in and find out what's going on, right? So there is an audit trail that's associated with each of these. I can drill in and look at that information. So I click on the failed. You can see it brings up the history, when it came in, where it went, and it says that this email address has been rejected as invalid. And what that tells you is that we do have bidirectional communication with the mail server on the other side, and we actually get confirmation of things of what's going on. So if I need to resolve that, I can just simply click on resolve. I can change the email address of where it needs to go to. I could elect to print it out myself, and I could check what printer I want it to go, or select what printer I want it to go to, or whatever it might be. I might need to come back to it at a later time, so I just leave it as is, right? Here's a warning message. This is a very typical scenario, right? It got sent out, but a response came back saying that I was out of office. Well, maybe I already talked to that person earlier today, and they forgot to turn their out-of-office assistant off, and it's still on, right? So I can come in and click on my resolve, and I'll just go ahead and say, nope, I'm going to mark it as delivered because the person told me that it actually did wind up getting delivered. And you can see, notice right away it says that it was. So you can work these exceptions very easily. Now, if you're in a situation where your jobs are not just 10 or 15 like mine, but maybe hundreds or perhaps 1,000, to scroll through that one by one would perhaps be not desirable, right? So one of the ways to get around that is you can quickly just click on up here in your dashboard, is click on the failed queue, and it just drills you right down into those jobs that have failed. And you can see I've submitted that job twice, so that's why you've seen the one job from this batch and then that same job from another batch. And this gives you really immediate filters down into the documents that you need to work. It's all about simplifying the user experience. I'm going to go ahead and clear that back out and go back to our main screen. So now that's the experience on the sender side, right? And again, you can have your different batches, you can have your different documents, you can, et cetera, et cetera. But notice it just says that, notice a lot of these are actually being delivered via email. And it just says that they're delivered. But what does the recipient see? What do they get? You remember I showed you a screenshot a moment ago. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at that. So if I go back over to, say, my browser here, and we're just using a Gmail account, so I'm going to log into my Gmail mailbox. And here's a mail that went out. And if I want to actually look at one of those invoices, I can just click on that. And here's what they would see. Again, this can be personalized. This can include your company logos. It can include the text you want to put into the body of the email. So it can be very personalized as to how and what you want them to see. But all they have to do to view the document is just simply click on the button, and it takes them right to the PTX Connect portal, and they see their document. They can't see anything else at this particular point in time, but they do have the ability to onboard themselves. Notice how I said that. They can onboard themselves, and they can take care of it without actually having to be set up by yourself as the company who utilizes PTX Connect. Now, if I am a registered user and I do want to go look at certain documents, right, I actually have the capability to do that. So I'm going to come over to another browser session here, and let's suppose I'm a customer and I want to, another week or two later, and I want to be able to gain some insight to some of my documents. I'll go and log in. So I'm going to log in as a pre-sales user. Put in my password credentials. And notice when they go in, they see their inbox, whereas you as the organization who is utilizing the PTX service, you would also have your documents that are going in your outbox. If I were to click on the outbox here, it would just be more of a promotional thing for the customer to look at, the recipient to look at, utilizing PTX as a whole. But here you see all the different documents. You see invoices, dunning letters, purchase orders, because this particular recipient's getting different documents. They have the ability to do search criteria, right? Naturally, if you want to, they can drill down. and they can type in, they can select specific things, right? So I want to look for a certain document, say I want to go and reference, the reference number being 698. And I can go and do that search, and there's all the documents that were 698. And with that, I can drill in if there's different date and time stamps and things. You can see it's just the same document over and over here. But if I want to view the document, I just simply click on it, I open it up, and you'll notice there's a document. And then they can print it, they can download it, they can actually do some collaboration and say, I have a question about the amount, and I can post that. And that notifies the actual sender, and the sender then can be notified and go into PTX Connect and just continue the collaboration to help resolve whatever issue that might have transpired. So you can see it's real quick, real simple, real easy for the two to work in tandem from both the sender standpoint as well as the recipient. And now all of a sudden I gain better control of not only the fact that the whole service provides the ability to manage these documents for me, I gain better visibility into those documents and control, and I can spread that across different users within my organization for whatever they need to work. By the way, if I go back to PTX Connect here as the sender and refresh, remember that one document that I opened up the email and actually clicked on it and viewed it. If I come back here and look down this list, right, it's actually down further into this one. I might have to go to the next page. Let's see there, go to next. We would actually see that that particular document would be viewed, and then that all of a sudden allows them to be able to gain better access to knowing what things want to open, when they actually look at things. There's, by the way, there's one with a collaboration with something posted that was a different document, just to show you that there was just some general comments, just some letters keyed in there. So overall, you get the idea of how things can be managed throughout the course of action here. There's also the ability to look at trends. So we have what's called our Insights tab, where you can look at things more from a graphical standpoint. So if I go in and look at my invoice, I can look at certain currencies, and all of a sudden I get a different view. At this particular time, we only have a few things in our system, so the warning message is saying that's a pretty high dollar invoice at that, so that's a pretty one I need to draw attention to. I can look at what's been going on today, the last 7 days, the last 30 days, so I can then, again, look across my documents and see how frequent things are failing, or how things, if I'm getting more warnings, et cetera. So, and then you can look at how long are things sitting in the actual system until they're actioned. This is very telling, right? Because as an accounts receivable person, I can see the average number of days it takes from somebody who gets an email to the time they actually open it up and look at it. And that's good information, because if I see trends where for certain people, certain customers at the same time, then maybe maybe it's an individual on the other side who takes their time, to whether there's perhaps other things going on that I need to draw attention to have them work things a little bit differently. Maybe the format of the documents is the result of why they don't get around to looking at things, and because this doesn't have typically an easy layout or nice layout to it to be able to look at the information and work with it. So again, all these things kind of come together as a whole. So this is just a quick snippet kind of going into the product as a whole and giving you some visibility as to how the service as well as the UI experience will look. So if I come back to my presentation and we try to look at all this and bring it all together, right? So PTX Connect provides great benefits to organizations to help them communicate clearly, meaning that they provide the ability to build and deliver the presentation of the documents, obviously in a very clear and professional format. If you desire, you can maintain and manage that yourself as well. You can be very proactive in terms of being able to know if documents actually got delivered or did not get sent successfully through the dashboard, if you will. Visibility. You now have an online portal to these documents. Get rid of the paper. Get rid of the filing cabinets. Get rid of the off-site stores. Also open it up to outside user access, whether it be your customers and vendors. And naturally, if you look at all these things together, if you don't have to manage all the systems for this, then it will also help reduce your overall cost. Certainly there's a cost for the service, but collectively when you look at all those things individually, the cost for the service is less and will certainly help you reduce all those manual and tangible costs as well. If you're not familiar with the Bottom Line organization, we've been working in the dynamic space for quite a number of years and have products that have been working specifically with things like AX and GP and also have delved into NAV and Solomon as well. With that said, as an organization, what we do is basically we help provide companies solutions to manage their financial processes, and that's all centric to especially things that are anything to do with how you get paid and how you pay your organizations. Whether that be domestic or international payments, we also have cash management tools. In addition to that, we have workflow solutions that help deal with, say, invoice processing, scanning, document management, et cetera, as well as what we just talked about here today, document output management with track and trace capabilities. So all these things collectively and individually can help streamline your processes. By doing so, you're also going to deal with an organization that is a global presence. It's headquarters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. But you'll notice here we've got offices and regional locations around the globe, but we've also got main facilities in Reading, UK, as well as down in Australia. So we were able to support, all of our customers' needs across the globe, as it's not uncommon to see that there's things that are being managed and printed and viewed, et cetera, by people throughout their organization around the globe for those that have global presence. Last but not least, we'll work to wrap up with questions. I want to open the forum up. As Josh mentioned, there's the Q&A bar there, if you will, that you can enter in your questions. And by entering those in, I'll be happy to take some on and answer. And for those I can't get to today, I will certainly look to follow up with you. I'll leave my contact details up here. We've been exhibiting at different conferences, and whether it be AXA Summit and others that go on throughout the year. This one from our previous conference. But you'll notice I got my contact details here. You can reach out to me directly, and certainly there's the ability to work through MSDW, and we can assist you. So I will, like I said, open the forum up for questions and wait a moment to see what might pop up.
All right, thanks, David. And a couple questions have come in. I would invite anyone else who's got a question to ask to please do enter it now. So the first question here is just asking, is your solution supported in Dynamics 365 for operations?
Absolutely, it does support D365. We have customers today who are already running our solutions on D365. So, yes.
All right. Does PTX support other ERP and accounting systems besides the Dynamics product line?
It absolutely does, and reality is PTX Connect is agnostic to the ERP system. I recognize that we're here today in a form, from MSDW, so we're talking a lot about Dynamics, but it doesn't have to be just Microsoft Dynamics, right, solutions. It can be any ERP system or any accounting system that can work with PTX Connect because it is, again, very agnostic in that regard. So welcome the opportunity to talk to anybody who has other systems and needs to support in that arena.
Great. Well, I want to make a last call for questions here. I'm not seeing any others at the moment. I do have a couple of just housekeeping notes. Please do look for a survey that'll pop up after the event. We really want to gather as much feedback as we can from attendees so that we can learn more about what your experience has been in the webcast environment. And I know our presenters always appreciate a little bit of extra feedback, too, about what you thought from about today's event. All right. Well, David, I'm not seeing any other questions right now, so I think we can begin to wrap up. First of all, thanks for taking the time to present to our audience today.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody who attended and appreciate your time in joining. And if there's follow-up questions, again, you got my contact details, and happy to connect and work with you. So again, thanks for your time.
Yeah, I second that. Thank you for your time, your attention today. Really appreciate it. And with that, we are going to wrap up. So that concludes today's event. Have a great day, everybody.